Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name is Clint Butt, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 118 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. All right, I told you about buying serious tools. Okay. I got to dig some deep holes here. While I was doing the first early hole there down on her wing, I'm going to do another one just right beside it, but I've got to go several inches down. And you don't have enough clearance to do it with a saw. I cut all this off, but I want to work this off a little more slowly and make sure that I don't damage anything down here because I'm going to be working over it. So I want to leave some extra mass here for now. And doing it with just a hand machine, even if I got a 1 1/4 out of the drawer, 1 1/4 machine to do it, there's still a lot of pounding. So the thing to do, remember I told you about pointing yesterday, last video? I got out my drill. This is a CP9 hand drill, okay? It's a few details about it. This is what's called a spline drive. That means I could pull this chuck back and pull that out. And there's slots cut into the side of the tool. Now, the old hex drive ones have got a cone that screws on the top, so they don't change quite as quick as these do. These change really fast. The drill bit has an air hole in it, runs all the way down the shank so that air from the machine can flow through this and blow to clear the hole out. Okay? This has a function where it can either be a hammer only or a drill, impact drill. And if you use these as a hammer, it tends to bugger up the drill mechanism. So I've got an older one that I kind of wore out, used it a bunch and I used it hammering. And now I just use it as a hammer. This is my drill. But run it on the same air line, put a steel bushing in there, just like your hand machine. Turn your air on. And it's awesome. So I've got tape on this to try to measure, keep track of how deep I go. I'm going to work this down to open this up some. And I'll try to move the camera so you can see it running. But, I wanted to show you, you can do this type of work with just a plain old, impact drill from, your local box store and a carbide tip, on your machine. You got to understand that if you work, you have to have a stone that's got enough mass to take the energy that you're putting into it, hitting it hard with this, so that it doesn't just break and blow out. You can't, you gotta have balance. Remember I told you you split the stone down the middle and it'll split even if you get off center. Now if you got a lot of stone to take off and there's not much behind it, you're probably going to destroy the whole stone. But we'll drill a few holes and then I'll be able to pop this out and then I'll go in and finish it with the hand machine. Let me move the camera and see if you can see this. You might get a kick out of this. What I forgot to mention about this drill that makes it so important is that the trigger is inside the handle. And that means, I'm going to turn the air off just so I can run this and you won't see. Okay? Most of these drills, they're designed so that you work all day and you're putting your energy into it and they're for the ease of work. Most of these drills are used for more demolition related stuff than accurate drilling, because they're kind of brutal for a lot of people if you're not, pretty rugged. So they have what's called a backstrap actuator or trigger, and there'll be a flap here on the back that kind of sticks out along the back, so that as you push against it, when you're operating it, the weight of your body runs the trigger, and so it's supposed to limit user fatigue, because as long as you push against it, it runs. Okay, well, when you're carving something fancy, that's kind of a problem, because you can't control this tool well and back off the pressure and still hold it and not have it take an errant hit and knock something or fracture something. So this has got a trigger inside the D handle, and this is the only kind of tool that I'll use. This makes a big difference, because I can maintain full control over this tool pushing it and still let go, and I've got complete control over the tool, versus letting it go and having this big tool vibrate around and do what it wants to do. Buy a hand drill, something like this, a big demolition drill. My advice is to avoid a backstrap actuation or a backstrap trigger. Get a trigger that's inside the handle, and then you can control it. Okay? I'm pretty close, back to work. Just hold a little more. Let's take a look at this. Just a couple of minutes. I don't think I spent more than 5 minutes, just a few minutes on this. We're able to wipe out a lot of stone. Dig it way deep. Now I'm still high. I'm still, I might be almost an inch high at that point. I don't want to get close with this because I don't have it measured out the way I could. But what you'll find out, the way they did Mount Rushmore is they used a bunch of these type big pneumatic drills, and they drill in a honeycomb fashion. Drill a hole, a hole, a hole, and a hole, just as close as they could to each other. Whether they ran them offset or whatever. And then you can take it, hit it, and you can clear off a great big piece of honeycomb. Talk about, and then take the face back like an inch at a time or whatever. You go around it with a chisel and fracture it, and it'll break off, and you'll get pieces of honeycomb on it. You can also use a channel bar to knock out the webs, and we'll show you that later on. But for right now, this is all I really need to do. I can put I've got 4 points and 9 points that I've made to go on these machines. I carved a lot with one of these up in Vermont. We call it a Cleco, just as a generic name, because at one point it was probably a Cleco chipping hammer or maybe even a rivet gun. And it's really tremendous. It cuts down a lot on fatigue when you're doing a big stone and you want to just pull off a lot of work. And it's a whole lot safer than using a 3 inch and a quarter machine, where you're holding your hand down here and holding the 9 point or the 4 point in there, like you normally do, because it only takes one bounce to pinch your finger, and there's a big chunk of meat just gone off your finger. So now I've settled in and start working this back with a 9 point regular tool, and I may hit it with a drill once in a while, but for the most part, the bulk of that's wasted down, and it's a lot faster. So just remember, you can go good fast, and you can go bad fast. So you got to be really careful. That's why I'm not going to try to get right down and get within, a quarter inch or whatever of my depth, because I don't have an exact measurement. And so I'm not going to get close. I'm going to start working. I'll do my survey area here and start working it down. A hand drill. Man, that's an awesome machine. You'll do a lot of work with that. Back to work. I've got one of these somewhere, and I think I showed y'all the video back when I was talking about suction back early. You got these deep holes. I went and cut some of this off because I don't have to have it there, so I just get tired of dealing with it. When you get these deep holes, you can't cut as easily and get down in. So like I use a piece of old, I think it's vacuum hose off a swimming pool. Just what I've got. Cut a hole, and I made a fancy one. I can't find mine. I've had one forever, and I'll trip over it now, but I couldn't find it. But I keep a piece of hose just to have extra hose, and scrap piece of plug is enough for a handle on this one. flip it right over the end right there. And now you can go down and suck up all your stuff. It works really well. And to just make it tight, this could be a little bit bigger. It's the way the plywood was. So but just stick it over the end. Now you got a vacuum. You can go over and clean up all your little stuff instead of blowing it all over the place. All right. One more shot made tool. Back to work. Now, because I know where previous points are, there's absolutely no reason to start swinging compasses a whole lot when you're 3 or 4 inches high. You swing them once to understand, like I marked up here on top of the stone, over on the side over here. I marked a little bit so I could get a rough idea that I had to be right in this area. And so I worked this stone down to within 1/4 to 1/2 inch of where the point needs to be. Now remember what I told you about keeping your pencil and giving those marks a twirl because you'll lose them? See how faint that point is right there? You'll get going like this and you'll lose track. Keep a mark. I wasn't worried about it because I'm hogging stone out, but see there's barely a 1/4 inch. Now I can smooth out an area. I'll put some plaster in here, I'll smooth it a little bit, and I'll swipe it and see. I should be about a 1/4 inch high because it's just about the same exact height as this. Hopefully it should be inboard towards the center line just a little bit. So I may have to take a little more off of this wall, but there's no reason to swing. This is about time, economy of time. There's no reason to swing the compasses a whole bunch of extra times if you don't have to. If you know you're 1 or 2 or 3 inches above and you're confident about where you're supposed to be in general, you don't need to keep swinging the compasses. I hadn't touched them yet, so I marked the first couple swipes just to get an idea where I am. I know that this point off for me is going to pull in as it goes, and these other two are going to come down and they'll probably travel. So let's see how it looks. And that's what we've got for swipes. So these strikes, as this drops, both of these are going to move. They're going to advance. So these two lines will come together and lay right on top of each other, just like the last one. And there'll be the cross. So I got to go a little bit deeper. That's looking good. I had to chuckle a little bit when we was working on the video and editing it. And I came to the segment with this hand drill, and the auto volume on the camera just totally shut it down, and it was nice and quiet. If you think this is a quiet machine, you're sadly mistaken. That's why on that clip you can't hear me talking after, because the camera turned the volume down so much that you can barely hear me speak. These are really loud. I put a muffler fixture on there, similar to the old hand machines, and tried to quiet them down some, and it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. They make a lot of noise and they use a lot of air. My regular electric compressor, I think, is about 18 CFM, and my gas portable is in the 22 or 23 range, and it runs pretty good at 18. Boy, the portable compressor, it puts out a ton of air, and this thing just flies. But if you've got a little 5-horse, little shop compressor that'll barely run a hand machine, you're not going to be able to run one of these. So, don't think just because you buy it, your little compressor will run it. I want to show you one thing about these tools. I mentioned before how your different calipers can flex. And this is one of my beam compasses. It's pretty thin. I'm going to hang the camera up. I've got a pad right here. I'm going to put some plaster down and show you that I mentioned about keeping track of your tension. If you don't tension, sometimes the weight, the position can be enough to cause these compasses to flex. And so if you've got a thin end, like that end over there is pretty thin. It reaches great, but it's really thin. I'm gonna hang the camera up and see if I can focus right here. And strike a couple stripes in there and show you how much it can vary. Just based on the amount of flex that's in a given compass. And I mentioned this is why I don't use the really big Italian compass back on the back wall, because it seems to flex a lot. So you've got to really be aware of that, because you'll chase a point till you go past it, and that's not good. So see if this shows. Try to start with it just at natural tension. Put one stripe. Okay, now if I pull it just a little bit, see that? And if I don't keep it under tension, if I let it rest on that back heel because of the way it's inverted and I swipe it, see how much variation you can get in that? That can be fatal if you're shooting a point. So you've got to really pay attention to how it's working, and you might find that when you're swinging it, and this can happen, you know, you can get this error in both your model measurement that you swipe and the one that you capture on the triangle. And if you get that error in two places, it can compound it and make it even more. But there's easily a 1/4 inch of play right there. So when you've got two of them, when you've got a long compass especially that's got some flex to it, you may find out that it doesn't quite line up the way you should, and it just never gets there. It may not be as tight as it was as you pulled it on the other model, or it may even be collapsing under its own weight, because the longer it is and the thinner it is, the easier it is to have some deflection. Okay, so pay attention. Be careful. The nice thing about using screws is if something doesn't work, you fix it. You change it, you move it around. I thought I could hang calipers on this, but there just isn't enough real estate between stones here. And so I just grabbed a crooked 2x4 and put a rack on one of my heavier bankers here. And didn't mean to kick it off, but that'll give me a way to put these up. When I tell you that these needle sharp ends will perforate you and cut you and scratch you and tear your clothes, I'm not kidding. They'll poke you in the eye. I mean, they can cause really serious damage. So I thought I could set them on the stone. Usually I've got a different work area. When I point, generally with them, I'm working back in here, and this pile of stuff, stone and model and everything, aren't here. It gives me the longest day because I'm furthest back in the studio. I can be right between the two sections, and then I can use the racks that are already here, but they're kind of obscured at this point. So I just stuck another one up real quick with some screws, and then I'll throw that back in the pile. But organize it the way it works for you. And if something worked one time, it may not work the next time. But now everything's picked up, and I can pick a compass up and put it away and have exactly what I want. And while I've got some screws and nails and saw and lumber, I got to work on covering this up. So I'm going to dig through and cover this up. The problem with having this exposed is that all these nice sharp square edges and corners that we work so hard to produce are really vulnerable now. And it'll only take one thing tripping over. And a lot of times moving these stands around and moving them, you're real apt to bump that bottom corner and chip it. So, and the bottom edge, you're not going to see it as much, but you're still not supposed to chip them. And so we need to get this covered up, and I'll get some lumber. These three pieces aren't quite big enough. I got to see if I got one more piece of this thin plywood just to put a cover over the top, and I'll basically put corners on it all the way around, put plastic over it so it stays clean, and so if it gets wet, it doesn't stain. I'll put plastic over and then drop something down. It doesn't have to be secured because you're going to have to move it and then, you know, probably crate it before it leaves. Depends on, I assume the retailer would prefer it to be crated, but I'll talk to him. And, I'm going to see if I can find another piece of plywood. Well, after some cleaning up and different work, we had I don't even know how to call it. We had a very special, weekend. And I want to show you a little bit about, you know, what happened. You will, as you progress, as you work with your studio and people see what you do and appreciate what you do. And I'm not saying that there's going to be more than one or two of them, because there may not be anybody that really cares. I mean, this is a very obscure lifestyle. You know, I tell people there's not a lot of people left doing what I do in America. And there's people, there's trades and there's guilds around the world that, you know, where there are more people doing this in certain parts of the world. In America, there's really a colony in Vermont carving stone, and that's diminished greatly since I started. And that's it, you know, and then there's me and a couple other people around the country that work with the industry regularly. But, you know, pretty much I'm out here on my own, and I don't have the world beating a path to my door. So if you're into this, you've got to figure out a way to make it work, and a way to make it both profitable and practical, and then you've got to figure out a way to live on what you make. You know, people want to know if you make a good living doing stone, and I say, well, I live on what we make, and you try to make the most of it. But you'll have opportunities show up, especially when people see what you do and understand that you're sincere and you're genuine in your dedication to the craft. Sometimes that translates into pretty serious opportunities. And one of those transpired just lately. Dr. Jack Turner was a professor here locally at the University of South Carolina here in Spartanburg. Big environmentalist in terms of water quality and trying to, I don't want to say save the world, but have people understand that it's all our responsibility to try to save the world, because this is our home. And my wife works with him very closely with water monitoring and stuff like that, and she loves getting paid to look for bugs in the creek, you know, and she does it, you know, part-time, and has a great time with it. But Dr. Jack died recently. I'd known him since college. I went to the beach with him. You know, we went down and did turtles on, I think it was on Pritchard Island, and back in the 80s, and it's just, you know, he's Jack Turner. But he was a blacksmith, you know, hobby stuff he did in his part-time. He was a wood carver, and he was a blacksmith. He passed away recently, and around the time of the service, we were asked if I was asked if I wanted some of his tools, and I thought, yeah, that'd be cool just to have something from him to incorporate into my studio as part of him, to try to keep him and his dedication to craft going. Because I did a little bit of blacksmith stuff with him, not much, and I always appreciated that he was carving wood, even though what he did was a lot different than what I do, and I love carving wood. So, big boon to the studio. So check out what we got over the weekend. I still don't even have words for it. Check this out. This is the blacksmith post vise, and I think it's a Kennedy Auto forge that came out of the worksmith of Dr. Jack Turner. He was a professor that I knew back in college. I actually went to the beach to service sea turtle nest enclosures and stuff way back in the late 80s with him. And he's been a big influence on me in a lot of ways, and involved with the family and everything over the last 20 plus 30, well over 20 years. But he passed away recently, and his family has gifted me with his wood carving tools and his forge and his vise. Now, what I've wanted to do for many years, last several years in particular, is I've been trying to put together a forge and all my different directions in this world, because some of the finer work that was done, especially floral work that was done in granite, was done with tool steel drills. Once you get your drills down to a certain dimension, carbide becomes too brittle and it just breaks. And so in order to keep the carbide strong enough, you have to make them so short that it's really not worth tipping them. And so I'm not a blacksmith by any shape or by anybody's imagination, but I know other people do it and learn to heat treat fire steel tools, and so I'm anxious to learn more about that and do it. But this is a pretty big step for the studio. They also gifted me with all of his wood carving tools, and so those will go with my wood carving tools. But I'll probably make a hood for this. I got to make room inside for it and get it protected. But this is the way studios grow and capacity grows. So now I've got a little more capacity to do a little more work, and I'm really excited. So so just wanted to share this with y'all, and maybe in a future video and I develop some level of competency making drills and tempering them, we can do some more videos related to making tools. Cool stuff. Back to studio. So now I've got more potential to. I'd save stuff to build a forge. I've got it up there. I've got a piece of steel, a channel that's almost the exact same size as the forge from Jack. And he'd actually sent me to look at some forges 10, 15 years ago at an auction, because he couldn't get away and they were busy, and he wanted to know if I'd go bid on them. And they were more expensive than his budget, and so I didn't end up buying anything. So it's really amazing to end up with more forge than we were even looking at that point. So, but this is the way studios grow, and you distill a lot of things around you to consolidate. And if you do it in the right way, you can eliminate a lot of stuff that doesn't fit, and just have a better and a better and a better and a better result, a better studio. And so this is my gift. You know, I can't claim to be carving because I'm just good, pat myself on the back. This is a gift from God that I don't have a full understanding of why I can do things that other people may not be able to do. And sometimes you're blessed and given things just because, and this is one of those times. So now Jack gets to be part of the studio no matter what. Pretty cool stuff. And I got a bunch of his other tools. I got a couple extra side grinders, so now I've got backup if, you know, like this, my big grinder, I had to take it apart and work on it the other day. And it's really a drag when you get to a point, and you know, whether your budget is there or not, where you can just go out and buy one, but to have a backup so that when something goes wrong, you don't have to say, oh, well, we got to stop, start all over again, put everything down, shut everything down, go to town, buy some stuff, come in, open, get it all going and get back to work. I can go in the next building and pull out a spare one that'll bide me by for a day or two until I quit, because it really can disrupt your workflow. And so, you know, and we've so it helps give your studio a depth. But think about that, and also think about where your studio is going to go after you, because you will be dead. You will stop doing this at some point, whether it's the day you die or whether you are not able to do it for a length of time before you pass, or you just decide, yeah, I'm done, and you hang it up. I mean, Darius, stone is dead to me. I paint now. I'm a painter. No granite. I'm done. It's dead to me. It means nothing. And so, you know, so I bought his tools. And they've become part of something a lot bigger. They seeded my studio. So think about that, because you have an obligation to your craft, to what you do and what you accomplish if you're serious. And there's gonna come a time where you're finished, you're done. And it's gonna be time for somebody else to carry on. That's really part of what this whole apprenticeship series is about realizing that we don't have an infinite amount of time to do this. It's limited. And someday I won't be able to do this anymore. Hopefully it won't be for a while, but you know, it may be today, you know, might be the end of it. I might, you know, tip over dead in 10 minutes and you never see from me again. So don't waste a chance to do something important and share. All right. And I'll get off of my soapbox now and get back to what y'all expect from me. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with a virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.